Enough said. You, of course, since you were editor of the magazine, you could also draw the cover.
Well, he told me, you know, one of the rules, of course, well, there are a lot of rules that we're always trying to break with Marvel, but that last one was a way of sneaking naked ladies on a cover that, oh, who's that?
It's Neil. Neil Gaiman, who wrote the introduction to the book.
Is that deliberately
Look at
upside
this.
down?
No, it's not supposed to be.
Well, at least you can...
I'm having a meltdown with this thing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, actually, so that picture is a very recent one of Neil reading the book that John held up.
We're gonna have to forget about this.
Yeah.
It's having a meltdown.
Okay.
Yeah. What do we got? Oh, yeah. Well, you want to do? Yeah, well, he's a publisher now, right? You're also an author right now. You did a biography of Al Camp.
Yep. Fascinating guy. If you know a little bit about Al Camp, this is somebody I wanted to write a book about for many, many years, and finally co-wrote it with Michael Schumacher. And unlike Harvey Kurtzman and Will Eisner, who were great geniuses in comics, but also great guys, Al Camp was a genius who was not a great guy. He had a very, very dark side. So you want to read about a cartoonist with a dark side, buy this biography.
And I had a pitch. Dennis is also a collector of, what are you a collector of, particularly passionate about right now?
I like tacky postcards. Well, just postcards in general. So I mentioned that to John in my, he interviewed me for his upcoming issue of Comic Book Creator.
Had a nice picture on it. And also Dennis was very helpful for me and my brother Andrew's documentary on Will Eisner. And I just need to do that plug. And we need to have some time for some questions. We got about 10 minutes for questions, right?
You wanna pick the person with the hand?
Hi. Two questions. What do you think about Untitled Chapter, and also sort of graphic novels, but along more definitely adult / erotic, like
All right, well, let's start with Harvey. Harvey contacted me at the very beginning of his career. I had in my correspondence ideas of his stories with his stickmen layouts and everything, and I agreed to publish some of his earliest work, and he drove me crazy. As you know from his comics and his and the movie, it's not easy, and it was so early in his career, and he drove me so crazy that I didn't want to deal with him anymore. And I remember telling one of my editors at the time, nobody in the world is going to deal with him. He's never going to break into comics. And he did, in spite of himself, partly by self-publishing. And but yeah, he was a very irascible character. I got to actually had dinner with Harvey 2 weeks before he died. We were talking about doing a project together again, so it kind of became full circle. But yeah, I think he was remarkable, mostly in his self-candor. You know, his stories, he was warts and all. And what you read about, you also saw in person. Yeah. And what was it about graphic novels? Yeah. I have not read Shadow and Light. I can't comment on that specifically, but I mean, as you saw from some of the examples on the screen, I mean, I thought eroticism is, again, one of those perfectly valid, perfect things for graphic novels done well. And I think that's the catch with most comics, is doing it well, because there's a lot of poorly done comics, and if you start out seeing bad ones, you may not ever get to the step of finding good ones. So, yeah. Show me after the panel. Yeah.
Dennis, I want to thank you because you were my introduction to the spirit. And the fact that you made so much of that available to a whole generation of people that really had missed out on it the first time. That's one thing. The other thing is, in addition to being part of the legacy of comics yourself, I understand that you've donated papers to Columbia University to help preserve the legacy of the history. Is that true?
Yeah, in January, they picked up 200 boxes of correspondence and what we call mechanicals from publishing and so on. So yeah, it'll be available to any scholars or researchers. So all the correspondence with Stanley and Crumb and Will Eisner and whatnot, it's all out there. Some of it, I mean, you know, what can I say? We often engage in very frank and candid conversations, and it is what it is, but at some point, if somebody's writing about any of this, that could be helpful, yeah.
Tremendously valuable.
I was crazy enough, I'm just, as John knows, a kind of a compulsive saver and collector, and so I saved every letter I ever received and copies of every letter I sent, so it's all there. And I was a compulsive letter writer.
I want to talk about, there's a certain little strange-haired character that you particularly have a fascination with.
Oh, Nancy?
Nancy.
Yeah. Ernie Bushmore is one of my, I don't know quite how to put it. And I'm not alone. You know, there's apparently a thing called the Bushmiller Society where adherents of Nancy kind of assemble, but it's just one of those quirky things. It's you know, love or hate.
The closest thing I can, besides Steve Krupp, who is the icon for Kitchen Sink, the fictional cartoon character publisher, the only, and correct me if I'm wrong, character that you really worked on with any regularity, was that Ingrid?
Early on, yeah, there was
Ingrid did something.
Yeah, I had a relationship in college that was with a woman named Ingrid, and we had a very unpleasant breakup, and so I decided I would start a strip called Ingrid the Bitch. So at least one person would appreciate the title, and it kind of, I think after I did a few of those, I just thought, well, the point was taken, and I didn't want to really continue it, and it could lead to litigation. So yeah, I thought about that. You know, I think most cartoonists, let's face it, if you want fame and fortune, you create something inventive and commercial, and you stick with it because that's your bread and butter. It never quite appealed to me, and that's one of the reasons I resisted the notion of this opportunity of doing a daily strip, was whether I could or not. I remember early on talking to Crumb about it, and Crumb said he could never be like a Mort Walker or any of these guys where every day you have to fill in 3 or 4 squares, same characters, similar gags, day after day. He thought that was just an awful, boring trap to get into, no matter how lucrative it might be. And I kind of agree with him. I didn't want to be trapped by that. I wanted to be able to do topical things on whatever appealed to me that day.
I have to put a plug in. I spent, 3 days together here in August last year. I was hanging out at he's got literally a big Bob out next to his
Big
pond.
boy.
Big boy. Bob's big boy. An unbelievable collection of Blue Abner material. I had some good pictures and everything. Eyeballs, alien faces.
Yeah, who else collects eyeballs in this room?
Anybody? I mean, well, not real eyeballs. Just an incredible collection. There's a room there, Andy. It's called the John Cooke room. He's got a Mona Lisa room that's completely dedicated to Mona Lisa images. What's next for you?
You mean we're talking about collections now?
Yeah, we got a magazine coming out that's going to be pretty much I would argue, a definitive interview, if I may say so.
Yeah, I would say John pick up next issue of Comic Book Creator. It's a self-portrait of me with, I think, 6 or 7 different hats, literally. Yeah, Jon forced me to talk about a lot of the same stuff, but in greater detail. And so, if you're curious about more,
And there's a lot more. That's a lot more.
but he asked me about things that have nothing to do with comics too, like collectibles. I collect a lot of things, big things like jukeboxes and little things.
Oh, yeah, jukeboxes.
And when I dive into something, I dive into it. With postcards, I think, there's probably 50 or 60,000 of them now, all organized very carefully by topic. And I find one and I just run with it. And some of these things from like 100 years ago, they were amazing postcards that by today's standards are very, sexist and politically incorrect and so on. But to me, they're an amazing portrait of what the culture used to be like. One of the things right now I'm focusing on is postcards of drunks, when drunks were funny. And it's amazing. It's amazing how many variants of the same jokes there are, and guys sneaking home at night and women with the rolling pin, and jokes around that, and those scores of them, and guys trying to find a keyhole. You think, well, you make a postcard of that once, with 20 of them, all different artists, different photographers, and all of them were, it's okay to be drunk, it's, the ones who were the villains were the wives waiting with the rolling pins. Today we look at it a lot differently. And so it's not just the object itself, it's what the objects tell us. And so the curious social historian in me looks at postcards in a different way, but I also like assembling them, and the publisher in me will eventually probably do books about them. So in 3 or 4 years you see the book of funny drunks, And there's a lot of them.
And you have offspring, who's a cartoonist as well. Your daughter's a cartoonist?
Well, not for the public anymore, but yeah, she seems to have that gene.
Yeah, wonderful. We have time for one quick question.
What did you say the title of the Outcast book was?
The full title is Al Cap, A Life to the Contrary. Thank you for plugging that.
Do you have that at your table?
Yes, it is at the table. Thank you. I'll give you your $5 on the way out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Previously reading Asbury Park reading, Mr. Denis Kitchen. Jon B. Cooke returns to our dais later on for a conversation with Peter Begg, and we've got Chris Claremont and much more coming up here, so stick around. Thank you.